Chapter 497. So, was she being showered with sweet nothings again? Jingwan pounced on Li Hongyuan and fiercely bit him. This was too much of foul. Jingwan didn't bite him hard, and Li Hongyuan was usually someone who took this as a form of entertainment, so he naturally let her bite him. However, the King of Hell had always been someone who refused to be taken advantage of. He always wanted to take it back 10 times or 100 times over. Thus, when Jingwan loosened her bite, he directly trapped her in his arms and fiercely kissed her until Jingwan almost couldn't breathe. Only then did he let go. Wan, even if you're excited, you shouldn't casually seduce others. Even if I'm your husband, you should be more reserved. What did he mean by pretending to be obedient after taking advantage of him? This was, and it was the epitome of the epitome. What did he mean by playing the blame game? This was, he was still an expert in his hands. Jingwan panted and calmed her breathing. She pulled this man's face, not wanting to argue with him, because if she couldn't win the argument, she would be the one who would be miserable in the end. Everything that wasn't too important could become very indecent in the end. However, the Su family's fire was really inexplicable. Fortunately, they only lost some ordinary financial resources. The collapsed buildings were a bit troublesome. If they were to rebuild, the entire Su family would probably have to move. No matter how good the other places were, how could they compare to the meticulously decorated home? In addition, after investigating, they still couldn't find the cause of the fire. After all these things, the Su family's faces couldn't be any darker. However, there were always people who weren't so optimistic. Noble consort Su, who had already decided to rest in peace, began to worry again. She had the Su family investigate again and again to ensure that there really weren't any mistakes. The head of the Su family was also baffled. What were the important things in the Su family, and where were they placed? He knew in his heart that everything was fine. What mistakes could there be? He didn't know what this noble consort, Su, was thinking all day long. However, because of her identity, he didn't dare to say anything even if she was his younger sister. In fact, there was nothing fatal in the Su family, especially after Su Mingzhang's accident. Some things had been taken care of. The only thing left was probably the ancestors' plot against the Fu family, but that thing had been passed down through several generations. The Fu family definitely did not know about it, and the emperor could not possibly know the truth. Thus, no one would deliberately look for that thing. However, if it was not an internal fire, then it could only be arson. No matter whether the arsonist was from the Su family or outside, there had to be a motive. Now, nothing had been discovered. However, the more unknown it was, the more uneasy it was. Imperial concubine Su was inexplicably flustered. She felt that something terrible would happen after the Su family caught fire. In the end, Imperial concubine Su still asked her brother to burn that thing. In any case, it was useless to keep it today. Emperor VI? There was no need to continue passing it down, and there was no need to follow the ancestors' wishes to see the Fu family destroyed. The emperor would do everything possible. However, if the losses were too great, Imperial concubine Su would also care about the interests involved. After all, she believed that the future Qi Yuan Empire would be her son's. Everyone wanted their own empire to be rich and powerful. Imperial concubine Su thought too much. Her body, which had finally recovered a little, deteriorated once again. No matter who it was, everyone knew that she couldn't go on like this. Imperial concubine Su was also forcefully controlling her emotions. However, the results were minimal. In a short period of time, too many unfavorable things had happened. If a person's emotions were so easily controlled and she could do whatever she wanted, then she was basically beyond the scope of a human being. Prince Rue couldn't leave the prince's residence. When he heard this, he became anxious. In the end, he had no choice but to let his princess enter the palace. Even though he knew that his princess was suppressed most of the time when she faced his mother, he felt aggrieved. It didn't matter usually, but now that she was pregnant, if she was depressed, it might not be good for the baby in her belly. However, he also hoped that this child could make his mother happy. The idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. In the beginning, this method did work to some extent, but it wasn't very good, and it didn't last very long. It was obvious that imperial concubine Su had the idea of confusing the royal bloodline early on. It was enough to show that she didn't value the child as much as others, or even as much as she thought. The reason for this was that imperial concubine Su habitually said some words to manipulate Princess Lu. She wanted Princess Lu to know that she and Prince Rue were one. If her husband couldn't be well, then no one could be well. What she meant was that she didn't want Princess Lu's maiden family to change sides at the last minute. If they did anything that harmed Prince Rue's interests, no one could get away with it, even if they shed all pretense of cordiality. Princess Lu had had enough of imperial concubine Su. Now that she was pregnant, she still couldn't stop. No one would be in a good mood. For the sake of the child in her belly, she decided not to endure it this time. Therefore, she stood up directly and said, "I think it's better for Mother to rest quietly. In this case, I'll take my leave first." Imperial concubine Su, who had always been submissive, actually disobeyed her one day. At that moment, imperial concubine Su's expression was quite interesting. In her heart, it was perhaps even more difficult to accept than Jingwan's disobedience at the beginning. After all, Jingwan had never obeyed her from the beginning. Princess Lu was inexplicably happy. Sure enough, there were still many things that she couldn't see through. Once she saw through it, or it was better to say that she didn't care about it, nothing could bind her until she couldn't breathe. Imperial concubine Su sneered. "Good, very good. I'm useless now. Even I don't have the patience to listen to what I have to say." Since she had taken the first step, Princess Lu felt that her mother-in-law was just like that. She was also a person, a woman, and a woman who also needed other men's favor to live a comfortable life. The child at her belly was important now. She had her own family to support her. In this case, there was no need to make herself suffer. "Mother, I remember how you treat me all these years. I probably won't forget it for the rest of my life. If it's possible, perhaps I can let your future granddaughter-in-law have a taste of that. But after thinking about it, I feel that it's quite meaningless. Only those who are sick would inflict their own pain on others. I think that I'm still a normal person. Moreover, it's uncertain whether you can have a granddaughter-in-law. After all, who can guarantee that the child will be a boy?" Imperial concubine Su's face turned livid. "Shut up. It must be a boy in your belly." "A boy?" Princess Lu smiled mockingly. "Yes, according to you and the prince, it must be a boy even if it's not, right?" They were willing to do anything for their own rights, but who had ever considered her feelings? It would be fine if she gave birth to a boy, but what if it was a girl? If it was a little better, she wouldn't know where she would end up, but if it was a little worse, she might even die. She was clearly the daughter of a noble family and should enjoy the most honorable life. But because of these people, she was mercilessly deprived. Based on what? Just for more people's riches and honor? What riches and honor? What kind of life did she live after marrying into the prince's mansion? What was the point of such riches and honor? She had already wronged the 2 children before her. Was she going to continue to wrong the one in her belly? There weren't so many schemes. What was wrong with living a good life as a family? "Lady Lu, do you know what you're talking about?" "Mother, of course I know. I've never known it before. I know it better than ever. I didn't understand it before." Imperial concubine Su breathed heavily. She almost couldn't control herself and directly stood up to give Princess Lu 2 hard slaps. "Since you know it, then you should understand that there is no way out for some things. If you retreat, your daughters will die with you. Do you want to lose all 3 of them, or 2 of them? Of course, if it's a boy, then everything will be fine." Princess Lu smiled bitterly. She also knew this, so there were many things that she couldn't do as she wanted. "Mother, do you really think everything will be fine if you give birth to a boy? How would the prince get poisoned? Even if you give birth to a boy, the person behind the scenes can make an issue of it, right?" Daughter-in-law hopes that imperial concubine mother and Prince Wang Yi will be more skillful in the end and get what they want. Daughter-in-law is not doing this for my own glory and splendor. I just want to save the lives of my 2 daughters. Anyway, daughter-in-law does not expect them to have a good future. After all, there are not many princesses in the imperial family who have good days, especially their father, who has never put them in his eyes. The corners of imperial concubine Su's mouth twitched. For a moment, she really didn't know what to say. "Mother, take good care of them. If there's nothing else, I won't enter the palace before the child is born. At least now, there is a piece of meat in my belly as an amulet. Let me enjoy myself for a while. As for after the child is born, who knows what will happen? Maybe I will even lose my life. Therefore, I should enjoy myself as long as I can. Otherwise, when I am about to die, I will recall that I have lived a sullen life for the rest of my life. If I am lucky enough to survive, I will be at your disposal." Imperial concubine Su dragged her heavy body and squatted. Then she turned around and left. Although her movements were slow, they were unusually firm. Whether it was the servants around Imperial concubine Su or the servants around Princess Lu, they were all trembling violently at this moment because they heard something that they didn't dare to hear. Imperial concubine Su felt dizzy. She rubbed her temples weakly. "Call people in, drag them out, and flog them to death." These words were obviously said to the chief palace maid beside her. The palace maid suppressed her fear and said, yes. She wasn't sure whether she would be flogged to death or not. The palace maids and eunuchs were so scared that they collapsed to the ground. However, they subconsciously begged for mercy, hoping that Imperial concubine Su would give them a way out. They promised that they wouldn't tell anyone about it. Otherwise, they could become mute. They just wanted to keep their lives. Imperial concubine Su was very uncomfortable now. How could she have the strength to deal with them? She didn't even want to say a word. Princess Lu moved slowly and was supported by her maid. They hadn't walked far when she heard the noise. Her expression was normal, but she clearly felt the maid's fear. "Hold on tight. If I fall, you will really die with me. Watch your mouth. You will be fine before the child is born." "Thank you. Thank you, Princess." She breathed a sigh of relief. Her life was saved for the time being. "Why are you thanking me?" "I am the one who put you in this situation. As servants, we all know how you are, Princess. But why can't you bear it for a while? You just want to be happy. There are some things that you shouldn't say. In this way, when the child is in your belly, you can live a carefree life like Princess Jean. It doesn't matter." Princess Lu glanced at her in surprise. "I didn't expect that you're so good at talking. You're usually a little dull. I know what you said, but some people just don't know and don't want to know. I have had enough of these days. Moreover, pregnant women have a strange temper. Most of the time, they probably can't control themselves. It doesn't matter if they say it." After Princess Lu left the palace, she didn't go back to Prince Rue's mansion. Instead, she asked someone to go to the farm directly, because she didn't want to face her husband now. She was afraid that she couldn't help saying something she shouldn't say to him. Therefore, she tried to avoid it as much as possible. Anyway, her husband couldn't leave the mansion now. Prince Rue was practicing calligraphy in Prince Rue's mansion. When he heard that Princess Lu went to the farm and his mother beat several people around him to death, he didn't know the specific reason. He finally calmed down, but suddenly he became irritable again. "Go and take the princess back to the mansion immediately." Prince Rue's eunuch complained incessantly. If the princess wanted to come back, she wouldn't go to the farm. Moreover, the princess was precious now. They didn't dare to be rough. Therefore, before they went out, they were doomed to make a wasted trip. However, they couldn't tell Prince Rue about this. They just had to make a trip and come back to be punished. It would be better if they could be a little late. As expected, Princess Lu sent them away easily. Anyway, her two daughters were also in the farm. It didn't matter. The eunuch could obviously feel the change in Princess Lu's attitude. All this happened after she entered the palace. Then, maybe it was a very wrong decision to let the princess go to the palace this time. People in Prince Rue's mansion, no matter whether they were servants or concubines in the backyard, were in deep trouble. Maybe the two concubines, who were disliked by Prince Rue at the beginning, were living a more comfortable life now. When a eunuch went back to report, he was ready to be destroyed by his master's anger. Therefore, when a teacup hit his head, he didn't even move his head. The blood flowed and covered his eyes. He just reached out to wipe it and didn't have any other reaction. Prince Rue was furious. He probably didn't expect that the woman who had always been obedient to him would disobey him. In fact, his thoughts were similar to noble consort Sue's. Married women should rely on their husbands and live a life of obedience to their mother-in-law. How dare she rebel? It meant that she was tired of living and didn't want to live a comfortable life. Did she really think that she could do whatever she wanted with a piece of meat in her belly? However, Princess Lu still did it. No one could do anything to her. Not long after, Jingwan naturally knew about it. Although she didn't know the details, she knew that Princess Lu must have quarreled with noble consort Su and her son. However, Jingwan didn't have a bad impression of Princess Lu. She didn't have a bad impression of her, let alone a good impression of her. She didn't care about it now. In the future, when it was time to scheme against her, she would scheme against her. She would never say anything about it. However, when Jingwan wanted to ignore it, Princess Lu came to her. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. For the sake of the pregnant woman, she met her. After all, it was really hard for a pregnant woman, especially when there were too many people expecting a boy in her belly. It must be very stressful for a pregnant woman. She didn't worry that something would happen. According to how much Princess Lu valued the child, it was impossible for anything to happen. Moreover, even if something happened in her farm, she wouldn't do anything in the end according to the nature of the King of Hell. Jingwan originally thought that her sister-in-law's situation wouldn't be very good. However, after seeing her, she was much better than expected. She looked very clear-headed and didn't seem to be under heavy pressure. Jingwan was surprised. "Why do you want to come here today?" Jingwan asked the servants to prepare tea and snacks. Of course, the tea was healthy flower tea, which was good for pregnant women. Princess Lu waved away her maidservants and nannies. She directly took a sip and said, "Sixth sister-in-law, the things here are special. Can you give me some later?" Her attitude was so relaxed that it was a little surprising. "Third sister-in-law, you're very precious now. I don't dare to give you the things that you want to eat. Well, I will give you the recipe. You can go back and ask someone to make it. It's not difficult, and it won't take long." "Okay." Princess Lu nodded without hesitation. "Before I came here, I thought that you would be comfortable here. As expected, after entering the farm, my mood became better. I'm afraid that I will have to disturb you in the future. I'm thick-skinned this time. Please forgive me, sixth sister-in-law." Jingwan really suspected that something had happened to her third sister-in-law. It was as if all the shackles on her body had been removed. She was so relaxed and carefree that she only lived for herself. She thought for a while. It seemed that noble consort Su seemed to be worse. Maybe it was true. If noble consort Su was worse, Jingwan felt that she would be better. Although the enemy of an enemy might not necessarily be a friend, and noble consort Su and noble consort Lu were probably far from enemies. As they disobeyed the same mother-in-law, they could still talk about some unimportant topics calmly. Princess Lu came to Jingwan just to chat. The reason why she came to Jingwan instead of others was that this sixth sister-in-law lived the most comfortable life. Apart from all kinds of grievances, her personality was actually quite likable. Princess Lu envied Jingwan. She used to be, and she still was. However, it was just a kind of feeling in her heart. She would not do anything because of it. Now, perhaps it was more complicated, because now, when she saw her sixth sister-in-law smiling like a flower and saw that her eyebrows were relaxed and her face was rosy no matter what, she felt better. Princess Lu touched her belly and said with a smile, "The baby will definitely like you in the future, right?" Jingwan smiled and raised her eyebrows. "Third sister-in-law, why do you say that?" "Because it's still in my belly. Because you're here, it can make his mother feel better." What kind of show was this again? Then Jingwan laughed. It was just a casual chat. There was no need to think so much. Even if she had a purpose, she could just deal with it as it came. "Third sister-in-law, well, I like what you said. I hope that the baby can also please my sixth aunt." Princess Lu touched her belly again and said with a smile, "Good girl, please your sixth aunt in the future. Your sixth aunt has a lot of treasures. If you please her, you'll get a lot of benefits." Jingwan did not want to think too much. However, her third sister-in-law was troublesome. Couldn't they just chat? Princess Lu stayed at Jingwan's place for 2 hours. At first, she just sat and then took Jingwan to walk around with her. Anyway, she lived like this in daily life. Jingwan did not care. It was just that there were a lot of flowers and plants on the farm. If she stayed with some for a long time, she would feel uncomfortable. She could not take it lightly, especially for pregnant women. She told her directly, and Princess Lu did not refuse to listen to her. She just walked around in those places where she could definitely go. She really looked like the most ordinary sisters-in-law. Jingwan could obviously feel that Princess Lu was very relaxed. After sending them off, Jingwan stood there quietly for a while. In the end, she gave up. There was no need to trouble herself. Anyone who had a little bit of doubt would have to go through all the twists and turns to understand. Wouldn't that be exhausting? Princess Lu was really a woman of her words. She came to Jingwan's place to report every few days. She had already said that she would be thick-skinned. What else could she say? It was fine if it was just 1 or 2 times, but if it happened more often, it would take up more of Jingwan's time. The King of Hell expressed his displeasure, but he was a man after all. How could he be so calculative with a pregnant daughter? However, he could not do anything directly, so he asked someone to find something for Jingwan to do. He wanted her to know what was good for her. Every time she was called away, Jingwan's so-called thing was to see someone, leaving Princess Lu alone. Jingwan did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said that this man was childish, but he did not admit it. Well, she did not say it in front of him. After so many times, Princess Lu also realized it. Especially when it was the right time, her 6th sister-in-law would be happy. How could she not understand? She covered her mouth and laughed. If you are really busy, you don't have to worry about me. Really? She emphasized the word busy. Obviously, she was found out. Jingwan touched her face subconsciously, wondering if someone had left some obvious marks on her body. She scolded him secretly. Then she saw Princess Lu laugh more mockingly. Even though she had been thick-skinned, she could not help but blush. 6th sister-in-law, you don't have to be embarrassed. Other people, even if they want to be like this, it is an extravagant hope. I, your sister-in-law, am also very envious. Originally, I also know that it is not good to always disturb others, but I also have no place to go. I stay in my own manor and am surrounded by a group of people all day long. There are all kinds of things that they say. It is really annoying. In other places, I am afraid that wherever I go, those people will follow me. They don't dare to follow Prince Jin's place, so I have to be thick-skinned and stay at 6 sister-in-law's place. The manor next to yours is also fine, but there are too many people and I am afraid that there will be an accident. So, no matter how annoying it is, I will probably continue to disturb 6th sister-in-law. However, you really don't have to worry about me. I will sit and walk. When the time is up, I will leave by myself. 3rd sister-in-law is too serious. It is not a long time. I am also very idle every day. If you feel more comfortable here, it is okay to stay for a while. Jingwan felt that her heart was really starting to harden. Now she was smiling, but in the future, she would still do the same. She would not be soft-hearted to this woman. Princess Lu nodded. As for Princess Lu's words, she did not hide it from the people around her. Among those people, there were not only people sent by Prince Rue, but also by noble consort Su. It was not because they could not see Princess Lu later, but because they had been serving Princess Lu when she was pregnant. Now neither of them could see Princess Lu. If they wanted to get news about her, they could only pass the message through the people around her. If they knew about Princess Lu's recent behavior and what she said, it was hard to imagine what their expressions would be like. In noble consort Su's eyes, Jingwan was a thorn in her flesh. Some of her opinions about Li Hongyuan had probably been buried very deep in her heart in the past, so deep that she didn't even notice it. Now it was getting clearer and clearer. When she saw Li Hongyuan again, she might not be able to hide it anymore. After that, Princess Lu came to see Jingwan less often, but it was not like she stopped visiting Jingwan. Jingwan also knew some things gradually. It seemed that 3rd sister-in-law was ready to cut off all means of retreat, but she did not know whether her attitude would affect their future plans. Don't worry. Even if she cuts off all means of retreat, she will not get any result. Let alone other things, she will definitely not be able to get through Li Hongming. Moreover, she still cares about her 2 daughters. If she can't change anything and gets herself into trouble first, Her 2 daughters will not be able to survive. Now, more than anything, she just wants to get by for the time being. Yuan also knows this woman's mind so well. Is it because he has seen countless women? It's not because I've seen countless women, but because I have an unpredictable princess at home. After a long time of hard work, I finally figured out a little bit. Then, I simply learned by analogy. I can see through other women at a glance. Naturally, I still feel helpless when it comes to my princess. I still need to continue working hard. Jingwan was not angry. Yuan is actually talking about yourself, right? Am I like this in Wan's heart? His thoughts are profound and hard to grasp. Yuan is very self-aware. What about you? I think that you can't be more honest in front of Wan. Why are you still unpredictable? Could it be? What? Jingwan answered subconsciously. Li Hongyuan's smile overflowed from the bottom of his eyes. Sure enough, Wan is too stupid. Jingwan's face darkened again. Why couldn't she learn her lesson? She should be vigilant every time this happened, but she still fell for it every time. It happened every time. She was really stupid, wasn't she? Jingwan flung her hand and left. It was too infuriating. Watching this, Nanny Gong could only shake her head helplessly. The princess was always bullied. In addition to the fact that she was young and weak, the most important thing was that she was the one who let the prince out. At the beginning of their marriage, the prince was not so unscrupulous. However, it was purely a matter of one's willingness to be beaten and the other's willingness to be beaten. Others couldn't say anything. However, if outsiders saw this, many women would be willing to be bullied like this every day. It was not until the end of August that Li Hongyuan asked Jingwan to pack up and prepare to go back to the prince's mansion. Counting with her fingers, she had lived in the farm for more than 4 months. Since Jingwan and the others had returned to the capital city, Princess Lu naturally had no place to hang out. But she was more and more peaceful now. People who didn't know her would think that she was eating vegetarian food and praying to Buddha. It was really amazing that a pregnant woman could have such an effect. But this time, after returning to the capital, Jingwan almost knew that there might be a result of what someone was going to do. Of course, it might also be the beginning. Li Hongyuan didn't have much to do during this period of time. Because he was busy with the war in the northwest, Jingwan didn't know much about it. She didn't interrupt or intervene. She didn't even have much time to look at it. Therefore, when he returned to the capital, he found that there were already some rumors circulating in the capital after the 15th of August. In fact, there was no need to think about who it was about. It was about Fu Yunting at the northwest border. As the war became more and more successful, Fu Yunting, as the commander-in-chief, seemed to have an ambition that he shouldn't have. He seemed to have the intention to build up an army and establish himself. No matter how ridiculous these rumors were, in short, they were spread with a nose and eyes. In particular, many people didn't know how to think for themselves. Because their knowledge was very limited, they didn't know how to think. They were more like parrots. They believed what others said and passed more and more ridiculous rumors to more people according to their own guesses. The more ridiculous the rumors were, the more ridiculous they became. In the end, people didn't know what the original rumors were and how they came about. Logically speaking, such things should be suppressed as soon as possible to avoid causing panic. However, Lu Qingdi thought that it was better to let it go than to block it. The more he tried to stop it, the more people would think that it was true. It was better to let it go. After a long time, nothing happened and the rumors disappeared. At the same time, he also sent the blackguard to surround Wu Anho's mansion. The reason was to protect the people in Wu Anho's mansion, in case they were attacked because of Su Mingzhang's matter, like the Su family before. Why didn't you want to protect the Su family at that time? Some people wanted to roar at Lu Qingdi. This encirclement, in the eyes of the people, simply confirmed the fact that Fu Yunting wanted to rebel. Otherwise, why would the emperor detain his family? This was clearly to make Fu Yunting hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. No matter how good the officials were, they only felt that it was ridiculous. It was really too ridiculous. However, Lu Qingdi still did things his own way. He said with certainty that there was no problem with it. Few officials in high positions were stupid. Gradually, More and more people seemed to realize Lu Qingdi's true attitude towards Fu Yunting. However, the closer they got to the truth, the more they didn't dare to believe it. There was no reason. The Fu family didn't do anything to anger the heavens and the people. But in reality, all the results showed that Lu Qingdi had ill intentions towards Fu Yunting and the Fu family. Of course, Lu Qingdi's goal wasn't to spread rumors in the capital. His real goal was to let Fu Yunting know that he had detained everyone in Wu Anho's mansion. He wanted Fu Yunting to think that he was going to harm Wu Anho's mansion, or that he didn't trust him. This would make Fu Yunting so angry that he would do something irrational. If this led to a loss in the war, then it would be justifiable to punish him. If he could really make him rebel, then it was needless to say. Lu Qingdi's plan was to use the fact that the two places were far away from each other to spread the news. If he did it well, he could even accidentally kill Fu Yunting and the Fu family. Perhaps it was because he felt that this plan was feasible and didn't need to sacrifice a lot of soldiers. Recently, Lu Qingdi had been in a strange state of excitement. After Li Honyuan returned to the capital, he went to see him once. In his previous life, he didn't know whether his good father was in such a state before his plan was about to succeed, because in his previous life, he had been forced to leave the capital at this time. His situation was quite bad, so he couldn't care about anything else. Li Honyuan turned around and reminded a few people to be careful. He told them that there was something wrong with a certain someone's brain. Even if it was something that was originally planned, they shouldn't act rashly. At this time, whether it was intentional or unintentional, as long as they went against him, then they could provoke his anger. A person who wasn't clear-headed could do anything. Things seemed to have come to a standstill. On Fu Yunting's side, if Li Honyuan hadn't sent him a letter in advance, it might have really gone according to Lu Qingdi's plan. Yuan, His Majesty has a good reputation. Even if according to his current plan, the result of accidentally killing is also a result of being muddle-headed. It seems to be a little more cruel and heartless than indiscriminately killing loyal people, but it's still a stain that can't be erased. Could it be that something has forced him into a corner? It's said that the emperor has passed down 6 generations. In His Majesty's mind, it's unknown whether there will be a 6th generation, so the safest way is to end it in his hands. Li Honyuan tapped lightly on the armrest. It's not impossible. Then, if it's really so, if Fu Yunting doesn't act according to his plan, will he simply get someone to fabricate a secret letter from the Northwest or something, fabricate some plausible evidence, and then deliberately act like he's furious and kill the whole Fu family first? At that time, Fu Yunting will really rebel. Jingwan quivered. Why do I feel that this is the real plan? If Fu Yunting really rebels, he can even erase the accidentally killing label. After all, at that time, no one will care about the order of things. If it's really so, this secret letter won't be made by himself. He needs a way to convince people. So, just the letter isn't enough, he still needs people. These will only be handled by the blackguard. Li Suyin is the best candidate, so there's no need to worry. When this letter appears, we won't know anything. Then what should we do now? I'll think of a way to get his medical records and see if there's something wrong with his body. If there is, then think of a way to increase his lifespan. At least let him feel that he can take things slowly with the Fu family. There's no need to rush and affect his eternal reputation. Isn't the imperial noble consort's altar completed? It's better to choose an auspicious day and start early. In addition, when the people pray for blessings, count in the emperor. After all, he's the husband of the imperial noble consort. Shouldn't he share the imperial noble consort's blessings? But I don't know if it will affect the imperial noble consort. Wang still wants to give him blessings. Whether he has blessings or not, won't it be up to you in the future? As the saying goes, if there's blessings, there's also life to enjoy. Li Honyuan patted Jingwan's head as if he was petting a puppy. Well, not bad. You didn't read those files for nothing. Don't say that. Jingwan slapped him away. The emperor's medical records were confidential, but it was not difficult for Li Honyuan to get them. Poisoned? It went deep into his internal organs. There's no medicine to cure him? Jingwan was surprised. Who did this to him? In this situation, even if he was forced to write a posthumous edict, it wouldn't be of much use. No, he just admitted it. It's widely acknowledged that Gong Jiu is better than the imperial doctors. How can he not ask Gong Jiu? Moreover, Yu Zhongqing didn't send us any news. Is he also being kept in the dark? Why think so much? I'll take Gong Jiu there and we'll know. https://www.yangwaiwo.com/11/11807/12700-542 www.yangwaiwo.com. Chapter 498. To some extent, Li Honyuan was definitely a man of action. If he said he would enter the palace, he would enter the palace. However, Li Honyuan didn't go to see Luqingdi. Instead, he brought people to the Jade Essence Palace to show concern for his foster mother, who was in poor health. Wasn't that reasonable? If you want to see Luqingdi, it would be difficult to explain how he found out about his illness. It might even arouse unnecessary suspicion. However, noble consort Su was different. If Luqingdi knew that Li Honyuan brought Gong Jiu into the palace, he would definitely go to the Jade Essence Palace if he wanted to. All emperors wanted to live a long life. Naturally, they would be more willing to live a little longer. When noble consort Su heard that Li Honyuan went to see her, she wasn't as happy as she was originally. She was also puzzled. Why did this adopted son suddenly change? He had ignored her for a long time. After a long time, she understood that her adopted son was really throwing a tantrum with her because he had a bad temper. If he was really angry, he should have calmed down a long time ago. There must be another reason. In the beginning, she was stupid. She thought that if she did her best, this adopted son would treat her with the same importance, and that her position in his heart was irreplaceable. Now that she looked at it, it was just a joke. The imperial family had always been filled with ingrates. In fact, her adopted son wouldn't suddenly change. It was just that she was used by Li Honyuan as a raft. However, noble consort Su continued to act as usual. Yuan is here? Why aren't you coming in? She seemed unusually happy, tears welling up in her eyes. Li Honyuan was still calm and walked in with an extraordinary bearing. This son greets mother. Noble consort Su was a little dazed. Seeing this son again, it was as if a lifetime had passed. It had only been a few months. Last year, he went to Jiangnan for half a year, but she didn't have such an illusion. Why? Why? Of course, it was because their feelings for each other had faded. They didn't even mention it. More importantly, noble consort Su didn't receive any benefits directly or indirectly because of him. Noble consort Su couldn't think of these things. Or rather, she didn't want to think about it. Yuan is finally willing to come and see Imperial Mother? Imperial consort Su's voice seemed to carry a hint of complaint, but also unconcealable joy. Li Honyuan waved his hand, and the palace maids beside noble consort Su retreated to the side. Li Honyuan stepped forward and sat beside noble consort Su's couch. Perhaps it was to let Li Honyuan see how terrible her current situation was. Imperial consort Su didn't dress up. It was more uncomfortable to sit up, so she simply lay down. It had to be said that even though Imperial consort Su had her suspicions, she still subconsciously wanted to obtain Li Hongyuan's care and benefit from it. In reality, she had never been clearer than in the past few months. She had a good relationship with her adopted son, and her adopted son would speak up for her from time to time. The attention and benefits she could receive from the emperor were much more than she had expected. If her relationship with her adopted son was still the same as before, then even if something happened again and again, she would definitely not be in such a sorry state now. The favor she had received in the past was more due to this adopted son than she had expected. This made imperial concubine Su feel very uncomfortable. At the same time, because of her current sorry state, she was full of resentment towards this adopted son. That's right, resentment. If this ingrate hadn't been so heartless, she wouldn't be in such a state now. Li Hongyuan's elbows rested on his knees, and his hands naturally drooped inwards. He leaned forward and leaned closer to Imperial Consort Su. With a faint smile, he slightly lowered his voice. As expected, You become so used to pretending that your bones have become hypocritical. However, for the sake of benefits, it's just pretending. It's not like you'll lose a piece of flesh, so why not? Imperial consort. Sue. However, it's actually quite hard to live with a hypocritical mask for 10 or 20 years. It's just that. Li Honyuan flicked the hair that had slid in front of him. I just slightly stopped cooperating, and you became like this. It's really unsightly. Imperial consort Sue's pupils contracted sharply. Even if she was as calm as she was, at this time, her eyes were also filled with fear. In Imperial consort Sue's eyes, even if this adopted son of hers was malicious and had a changeable temperament, it was only on the surface. Inside, he was still pure and even harmless. At least for her, wanting to control this adopted son in the palm of her hand was not a simple matter. Even if he might not be obedient on the surface, in the end, he would basically act according to her wishes. Now, reality had fiercely slapped her in the face. This was not the cruelty on the surface. It was more frightening in the bones. She had a pair of sharp eyes, but she had never seen through this person. How long did he continue to pretend like this? Imperial consort Sue stiffly pulled the corner of her mouth. What is Yuan are talking about? How come Mu Fei doesn't understand? Li Honyuan clicked his tongue, appearing a little impatient. Ben Wang isn't feigning civility with you anymore. Why do you continue to wrong yourself? So Jin Wang is saying that we're not the same? The smile at the corner of Li Hongyuan's mouth became more obvious. Do you really think so? Your biological son, I can deal with him however I want. After I'm done, you still help me reprimand him. So, Imperial Consort Su thinks that Ben Wang is the same as you? I only called you Mu Fei, that's all. Do you really think that I'm like you, wronging myself every day? You don't know how carefree I am sometimes. But for you, it shouldn't matter. In any case, you're already used to it. Used to wronging your biological son, your biological daughter, and yourself. Occasionally, Ben Wang will feel quite happy when he sees it. Imperial consort Sue's complexion instantly turned ashen, and her breathing became hurried. It was as if she could die at any time. Li Honyuan sat up straight again and lifted his chin towards Gong Jiu. Let Imperial consort take a look. Yes. Gong Jiu respectfully responded and stepped forward, wanted to clasp Imperial consort Sue's wrist. Scram, you're not allowed to touch Ben Wang. Since they had completely shed all pretenses of cordiality, how could Imperial consort Su believe the person Li Honyuan brought? Gong Jiu also obediently retreated a little. Why do you have to do this? If you don't raise him properly, how can you watch your grandson be born? That's a child you've been looking forward to for many years. Imperial consort Sue's expression changed slightly. She didn't know if he was simply mentioning this, or if the poison in her son's body was related to him. It was also the sterilization powder, so it was difficult for her not to connect the two. However, she had drugged her son more than 10 years ago. How could he have known at that time? No, that's not right. He might have found out later. That's right. Ben Wang has been looking forward to it for many years. Originally, I was also looking forward to you, Yuan. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that I'll never have that chance. Li Honyuan nodded. Ben Wang quite agrees with your words. Imperial consort Su still couldn't figure out what Li Honyuan meant. However, one thing was certain, and that was that she absolutely couldn't treat this adopted son the same way as before. Yuan, you've really surprised me. What's the matter? Do you also have thoughts about the throne? Or had you always had them? Unfortunately, no matter how good your imperial father is to you, he won't hand over the river to you. The throne can be any of your brothers, but it definitely won't be yours. Oh, Li Honyuan remained calm and unruffled. Why? Why? Imperial concubine Sue's voice suddenly rose. It was abnormally sharp, and her face was as ferocious as a malicious spirit. Because you're Japanese. Your mother died, and you were cut out from her stomach. Ha ha ha. Imperial concubine Sue laughed crazily. There was malice in her laughter, but also endless satisfaction from revenge. To be honest, none of the consorts who had seen the imperial noble consort back then weren't jealous. The emperor's kindness to the imperial noble consort was really ingrained in his bones. Once, Imperial noble consort Su was very ill and couldn't see the emperor even once. However, the Imperial noble consort Su only had a slight cold and cough, and the emperor never left her side. The Imperial noble consort Su changed again and again. How could Imperial consort Su remain indifferent? When she first took over raising Li Honyuan, she more or less wanted to strangle him to death. However, in the end, reason prevailed over everything because she knew how much benefit it would be for her to raise this child. She had always thought that those emotions from back then were gone. It turned out that they had been hidden very deeply and had slowly rotted away. At this moment, they suddenly burst out like a flash flood and tsunami, completely drowning her reason for a time. That bitch dominated the emperor when she was alive. After so many years of death, she still dominated the emperor's heart. So what if the emperor treasured her so much? Didn't he strangle her to death with his own hands? Haha, she deserved it. She deserved it because she was too greedy. As for you, you bitch, if I had known this would happen, I would have strangled you to death long ago. Li Honyuan didn't look at the expressions of the palace servants who served him. Anyway, they were already dead. Moreover, there were just a few palace servants who would never be able to enter his eyes. He just looked at Imperial concubine Su. For more than 20 years, he had just casually provoked her and completely exposed himself. Today, he entered the palace only for that man. In the end, he didn't want to pretend to be polite with this woman anymore. This gain was beyond his imagination. Mother, is what you said true? Li Hongyuan's voice was relatively soft, as if it was filled with endless sadness and disbelief. Imperial concubine Su felt that something was wrong, and her outburst of emotions finally calmed down a little. Imperial concubine, why don't you take a look at the door? It's a big surprise. Li Hongyuan's body was sitting sideways, and his hair covered all the expressions on his face. Imperial concubine Su suddenly turned her head. At the door, on the emperor's dragon robe, there was a flying golden dragon. In the entire Qiyuan, only one person could wear it. At this moment, Lu Qingdi was furious. His eyes were wide open, and he looked like a furious lion. Imperial concubine Su was scared out of her wits. Emperor, Lu Qingdi rushed forward as if there was wind under his feet. Li Honyuan understood the situation very well and stood up to step back. Bitch! Lu Qingdi raised his hand and slapped her. Looking at the wind from his palm, it was obvious that he had used 120% of his strength. Imperial concubine Su subconsciously wanted to dodge, but her current physical condition didn't allow it. She took a solid slap, then a second slap, and then a third. Imperial concubine Su could only cover her head and scream. She begged for mercy, but before she could say anything, she was slapped back and couldn't speak. After being beaten violently by Lu Qingdi, Imperial concubine Su couldn't resist anymore. She lay on the bed and was dying. Li Honyuan stepped forward and grabbed Lu Qingdi's hand. Father, do you want to kill Mother? Imperial concubine Su? Only then did the furious Lu Qingdi come back to his senses. He looked at Li Honyuan and saw that his face was silent. His eyes even revealed a deathly stillness. Suddenly, he was at a loss. Li Honyuan let go of his hand as if he didn't want to look at him at all. His eyes fell on Imperial concubine Su. Imperial concubine Su happened to meet his eyes, so only Imperial concubine Su could see the true ruthlessness and ridicule in his eyes. No matter what, Imperial concubine Su has raised me for so many years. When I was sick, she took care of me tirelessly. From food to clothes, as long as it was good, she would give it to me first. No matter what her original purpose was, these are all facts and occupy too many memories. Li Honyuan seemed to have fallen into a memory. It should have been warm and sweet, but when it came from his mouth, it was filled with endless bitterness. If Imperial concubine Su hadn't known his true colors before, she would have been deceived by him at this moment. The fear in her heart deepened. Li Honyuan, you bastard, who are you pretending for? Imperial concubine Su blurted out subconsciously. Because of Li Hongyan's interruption, Lu Qingdi, who had regained his rationality a little, heard this and became angry again. He raised his hand and was about to hit her again, but was stopped by Li Hanyuan again. "Father, you killed my birth mother, and now you want to kill my adoptive mother?" His voice was filled with sadness and sadness. This sentence almost made Lu Qingdi vomit blood. Yuana, it's not like that. Don't listen to this bitch's nonsense. It's her. She's jealous of your mother. Don't listen to her. Don't listen to her. He tried to explain incoherently. Li Hanyuan forced a smile. "Is that so? Then what is it? Father, tell me." Lu Qingdi opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Fabricate nonsense? Talk nonsense? Try to fool him as much as possible? "Father, you're hesitating. Then what else is there to say?" The last bit of hope in Li Hongyuan's eyes seemed to have been completely destroyed. He didn't want to say anything more to Lu Qingdi and looked at Imperial Concubine Su again. "I always thought that mother truly treated me as her own son, but it turns out that it wasn't. In comparison, you hate me so much that you can't wait for me to die." This son begs Imperial Father for one last thing. "Imperial Father, please give Imperial Mother a way out." Lu Qingdi's lips trembled as if he was struggling. "Okay, thank you, Father. With this, I'll repay Mother's kindness of raising me. This is the last time I'll call you this, Imperial Concubine." After Li Hanyuan finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. His footsteps seemed to be a little hurried, and he even forgot the last etiquette. Gong Jiu also followed him out. But not long after, Gong Jiu turned back and saluted neither too quickly nor too slowly. "His Highness originally wanted to take me to see Imperial Concubine Su's health. Even now, His Highness still can't let go of Imperial Concubine Su. Please let me take your pulse to fulfill His Highness's last filial piety." Imperial Concubine Su almost bit through her lips to restrain herself from blurting out some words. After all, Lu Qingdi was watching covetously from the side. Now that he had been completely deceived by Li Hanyuan, that bastard, he wouldn't listen to a single word she said. If she dared to say anything inappropriate, she didn't know what kind of consequences it would bring. Gong Jiu took Imperial Concubine Su's pulse step by step and prescribed medicine. It didn't matter whether he knew how to use the prescription or not. He tidied up the medicine box. "Your Majesty, I'll take my leave first." Wait a moment. Lu Qingdi didn't forget the reason why he first came to the Jade Essence Palace. He just didn't expect to encounter such a thing. The Imperial Concubine he thought was virtuous, and virtuous turned out to be a snake in human skin. He had been miserably deceived by her all these years. More importantly, she exposed the wrong thing he did in the past. The thing that Lu Qingdi didn't want to recall the most in his life, and the thing that he even deceived himself to forget, was so easily exposed. According to Lu Qingdi's own thoughts, this woman must let him have a taste of living a life worse than death. But because he had already agreed to his son's request, he didn't know what his son thought of him now. If he left first, he would break his promise later. Perhaps even their last friendship would be broken. Since Lu Qingdi asked him to stay, Gong Jiu naturally didn't dare to not stay, so he quietly stood aside. Lu Qingdi looked at Imperial Concubine Su with heavy eyes. "If it weren't for Yuan Er's pleading, I might have cut you alive." No matter how strong a person's mental endurance was, they couldn't help but be afraid in the face of death. Imperial Concubine Su shrank, and her teeth were chattering. She didn't think that Li Hanyuan kept her alive for the sake of their last mother-son relationship. But now, she was indeed alive because of him. No one wanted to die if they could live. Therefore, no matter how much malice she harbored against Li Hanyuan in her heart, she couldn't say it out loud. A person in a rage could do anything. For example, this man strangled his beloved woman to death because of anger. Compared with that woman, she was nothing at all. Therefore, it was better not to provoke this man. Lu Qingdi glanced at the people present, and his eyes fell on the servants of the Jade Palace. Just like what they heard from Princess Lu last time, these people were trembling. They couldn't even beg for mercy because they knew it was useless. In contrast, Imperial Concubine Su's chief maid was dead silent. She was lucky to escape last time, but since then, she had been living a bad life. It wasn't because imperial concubine Su treated her badly, but because she knew a secret she shouldn't know. She was in a panic all day long. Now, she even had a feeling that she was finally going to be free. As for exchanging the secret she heard before for a chance to survive this time, hee, don't have such a beautiful dream. Right now, she can no longer speak. Furthermore, she was illiterate. Thinking about it, how ironic was it that the most important palace made by the imperial concubine side was illiterate? Lu Qingdi finally looked at Yu Zhongqing, who was standing at the door. Deal with all these people. Yes, even if Yu Zhongqing heard imperial concubine Su's words just now, he only heard it. Not to mention that he was secretly laughing at Prince Jean. Even if he wasn't, this matter had nothing to do with him. No matter who the person sitting on the throne was, whether it was auspicious or not, it wasn't something he could comment on. All the irrelevant people were taken out. Lu Qingdi looked at imperial concubine Su coldly. From now on, without Zhen's permission, you are not allowed to step out of the Jade Palace. Su, sure, you have always been a smart person. If you don't want to implicate third, you know what to do. Imperial concubine Su used the last of her strength to clench her fist. Qinxie, thanks your majesty for your grace. Lu Qingdi snorted coldly and left with a flick of his sleeve. Thus, the three people who also knew the secret followed Lu Qingdi out of the Jade Palace. Moreover, it wasn't the first time Lu Qingdi met Gong Jiu, so he knew a thing or two about his temperament. This person, if it wasn't about the illness, he wouldn't easily open his mouth. Yu Zhongqing was promoted by him and was deeply trusted by him. Then there was the head steward beside him, who had been with him for a long time. It could be said that he was the person who had been with Lu Qingdi for the longest time. To some extent, no one had a deeper relationship with him than Lu Qingdi. In the Jade Palace, only imperial concubine Su was left. If it wasn't for the slight rise and fall of the person lying on the bed with her breathing, one would think that she was already dead. After a while, imperial concubine Su forced herself to sit up. She tidied up her clothes and hair. Although her hands were trembling, they were still crossed on her lap. She quietly looked ahead, still trying to maintain her dignity and nobility as an imperial concubine. As she sat, imperial concubine Su laughed neurotically. Li Hongyuan, no matter what your purpose is, let me go today. Come, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life. Originally, I raised you. Regardless of whether I was sincere or not, you have called me mother for so long. I wanted to let you be an idle prince and still have your honor and glory, but you turned out to be an ingrate and even bit me. Naturally, you can't blame me for being ruthless. Imperial concubine Su laughed louder and louder, and the more she laughed, the crazier she became. In such a big hall, it was creepy to hear. Lu Qingdi didn't go to other places but stayed in the imperial garden. He gave Yu Zhongqing a look. Yu Zhongqing understood and quickly left to make sure that the surroundings were safe. After that, Lu Qingdi asked about Li Hongyuan's situation intermittently, just like a good father who cared about his son. Gongjiu naturally told him everything he knew. However, in a place that couldn't be seen, Gongjiu's fingertips were pressing on Lu Qingdi's wrist. He was multitasking. However, it took a long time to feel the pulse. Gongjiu's eyebrows slightly frowned as he switched from left hand to right hand. How is it? Seeing this, Lu Qingdi's heart was in his mouth, afraid that the last glimmer of hope would be shattered. In the end, Gongjiu's eyebrows relaxed. Your Majesty, don't worry. Everything is fine. Everything is fine? Lu Qingdi's voice rose a few notches, full of disbelief. Your Majesty, it's true. You know, although His Highness's temper looks bad, you know his nature better than anyone. However, only a few people in the world can see through him. What others see is just on the surface. Those who don't know always like to use this to scare more people. His Highness is innocent. Lu Qingdi naturally understood that his so-called poisoning was actually just a superficial phenomenon. In essence, there was nothing at all. It was just that the imperial physician he found didn't see the problem at all. Lu Qingdi recognized Gong Jiu's medical skills, but as an emperor, he always had doubts. In the past, he would always ask another imperial physician to take a look at things related to Gong Jiu. However, it was different this time. He completely believed Gong Jio's words. After all, he was Yuan's man, and Yuan's biggest reliance was Luqingdi. If his body was really poisoned, there was no reason for his man to hide it. Knowing that his body was fine, Luqingdi clenched his fists. In this case, it was time to deal with the person who dared to play tricks under his nose. I'm relieved to hear that. By the way, since I've entered the palace once, it's convenient for me to have a look. Yes, Your Majesty. After a moment of silence, Gong Jio said, Your Majesty's body is fine. Ask the imperial physician to prescribe some warm and nourishing medicine. It doesn't need too much, at most 3 doses. At most, the symptoms of poisoning would disappear after 3 doses of medicine. At this time, Luqingdi was completely relieved. Gong Jio, your medical skills are outstanding at such a young age. Do you want to enter the Imperial Hospital? How about I let you take charge of the Imperial Hospital? Luqingdi was attracted to a talent like Gong Jio every time he saw him. This time, he couldn't help but think about it. If Gong Jio was here, he wouldn't have to be anxious for such a long time. Your Majesty, Your Highness, as for me, I'm indebted to Your Highness for recognizing my talent. It's up to Your Highness to decide where to stay. If you want to poach me, fine. You can talk to the master of the courtyard. This wall skirt means that I have no autonomy at all. Luqingdi was silent. At this time, he didn't dare to speak to his son. Forget it. We'll talk about it later. Luqingdi waved his hand. You can leave the palace first. Yes, I'll take my leave. Gong Jio took the medicine box and left calmly. As soon as he left, Luqingdi's face changed again. Have I been too kind in the past? In this palace, someone dares to play with me. Your Majesty, fortunately, the people of Prince Jin's mansion are skilled and didn't let the behind-the-scenes person succeed. Luqingdi snorted coldly. Before, he was afraid of breaking the vases, but now he had no scruples. Yu Qing, Your Majesty. Yu Zhongqing quickly appeared and stood respectfully in front of Luqingdi. Luqingdi whispered a few words, and Yu Zhongqing took the order and left. Gong Jio didn't stay long behind Li Hanyuan, so it didn't take long for him to catch up with the carriage of Prince Jin's mansion. After returning to Prince Jin's mansion, Li Hanyuan looked indifferent. There was no trace of the emotion he had in Jade Palace. Gong Jio saw it. He wasn't sure if his master already knew about it, or he hid it in his heart and didn't want Princess to find out. However, no matter which one it was, in short, the fact that his master was a devil must not be leaked out from his mouth. In fact, according to his master's temper, this matter wouldn't affect him at all. No matter what his background was, it couldn't stop him from doing what he wanted to do. Because the matter wasn't over, Gong Jio naturally followed him to the main courtyard. You're back. How's the situation? When Jingwan saw them, she put down the scissors in her hand and washed her hands. Li Hanyuan pulled Gong Jio to sit down on one side. First, he briefly explained the matter of Jade Palace. Although he didn't say it clearly, Jingwan understood what he meant. Her eyes were full of surprise. Did you do something? A person like noble consort, Su can't lose control of her emotions so easily, right? Not to mention speaking without thinking. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Li Hanyuan was slightly stunned. Yes, that woman absolutely couldn't be underestimated. How could she lose control to that extent after being stabbed by him? So his eyes fell on Gong Jio. Gong Jio immediately knelt down on one knee. Your Highness, please forgive me. I've been studying some drugs recently. Before entering the palace, I just habitually put some on my body. This drug is usually useless to people. But when people's emotions are abnormal, they will be affected to different degrees and become somewhat uncontrollable. If the will is slightly weak, they will speak and act according to their true emotions. So, it was really just an accident. However, for Li Hanyuan, accidents that were not in his control, no matter the final result was good or bad, were not allowed, especially when it was caused by his own people. Explain what happened later, and then go to receive your punishment. Yes, sir. Gong Jio explained everything in detail and then excused himself. So, the emperor should have been coerced. But now there's no need to worry about the consequences. The person who played the trick should be found soon. That has nothing to do with us. Li Honyuan had no interest in caring about his father's feelings. What about the original follow-up plan? Do we still need to use it? The imperial noble consort's religious ceremony should be done sooner rather than later. The original plan should be postponed. So, let's do the religious ceremony first. As for him, since he's fine, there's no need to involve him. I believe that the imperial noble consort doesn't want to be involved with him unless it's necessary. Well, we'll do as you say. Speaking of which, there was a reason why it took so long to complete. Although Lu Chengdi attached great importance to this project and sent people to each altar, and Li Honyuan also took the opportunity to place many people there because there were too many altars, there would always be people who would do everything possible to destroy them. Naturally, there would be times when it was impossible to guard against, so the construction period would be delayed. Because the general progress had to be constant and the final completion had to be completed at the same time, the progress of each altar had to be summarized at all times. One place was delayed, another place was delayed, and one place was delayed. When one place was delayed, the other 80 places were delayed as well. The construction started on the 2nd of February, and the auspicious day for the final completion of the altars was chosen in late August. It took more than half a year, and the effort spent was more than expected. It could only be said that there were more people than expected, and they didn't want this matter to be completed perfectly. In the end, it was because of Lu Chengdi's toughness that it could be completed. If it weren't for him, Li Honyuan might not be able to achieve his goal no matter how much he did in secret. After all, the scope involved was too wide, and it was too difficult for Li Honyuan to control it all. Li Honyuan handed in a well-behaved memorial. Lu Chengdi saw that the handwriting on the memorial had become as plain as before, and it was no longer as outstanding and handsome as when he was in high spirits when he got married. Lu Chengdi couldn't help but feel distressed. Before, when he didn't know about it, he restrained himself because he sensed his intention. Now that he knew about it, was he really going to keep quiet completely? Lu Chengdi's head hurt, and he didn't know what to do. Moreover, he couldn't ask his ministers about it. After all, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. In other words, the fewer people who knew that he killed the imperial noble consort, the better. If no one mentioned it, he might be able to continue deceiving himself. However, Lu Chengdi knew very well that Li Honyuan had known about it. If he really wanted to gloss it over, he would be ruthlessly exposed just by looking into his eyes. Moreover, he didn't dare to see his son now. Yes, he didn't dare to. He was afraid of his son's questioning. Therefore, he wanted to bury the hatchet with his son, but he didn't want to face it. There was a strong contradiction in his heart. However, his son might not want to see him, so he let it be for the time being. Lu Chengdi wrote a big permission on Li Hongyuan's memorial, and at the same time, he gave full power to Li Honyuan to deal with this matter. Li Honyuan could use anyone he wanted, and he didn't even need to submit a memorial to him. This matter was even mentioned in the imperial court. In other words, he gave Li Honyuan considerable power, which would never happen under normal circumstances. Some ministers wanted to persuade him, but they were scolded by Lu Chengdi as soon as they opened their mouths. In particular, the ministers seemed to be related to the Su family, which aroused Lu Chengdi's resentment against imperial noble consort Su. Therefore, Lu Chengdi directly took his anger out on him, stripped him of his official uniform, and threw him out of the imperial palace. Seeing this, the others thought that they had touched Lu Chengdi's bottom line, so they kept quiet out of fear and didn't dare to say a word about it. After learning this, Li Honyuan smiled. His smile was a little sarcastic and a little gloomy. Since such an opportunity was given to him, he would naturally make use of it openly and take the opportunity to consolidate the forces under his command. Because no one believed that Li Honyuan could do anything in a short period of time. No one would suspect anything even if Li Honyuan met someone or gave orders as a matter of course. As insiders, they inexplicably felt a sense of superiority as a prophet. They only hoped that when some people found out later, they wouldn't feel that they had been fooled too badly when they thought back to today. However, those who would think this way were those who were still alive. Because they could mobilize a large number of people openly, many things would go smoothly. there wouldn't be a shortage of people to sabotage things. The 81 altars required 81 eminent monks to preside over. The one near the capital was personally presided over by Master Liaochen. No one could doubt Master Liaochen's prestige. Therefore, regardless of whether they were sincerely praying for the imperial noble consort, anyone who gathered near this altar would be influenced by him and become devout. Jingwan and Li Hanyuan had naturally gone there personally. Jingwan felt that it wasn't Master Liaochen's prestige that influenced people, but something about him that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Jingwan felt that it was a little evil. Oh, wrong, it was a Buddhist nature. Just as Jingwan was doubting whether it had any effect, Jingwan went to the palace to pay a visit to Qin Shufei. Just by looking at Qin Shufei, Jingwan knew that it had worked. Perhaps it was because the two souls were in one, but the imperial noble consort spirit had improved and Qin Shufei was greatly affected. First of all, the effects of Wanshou's poisoning last year had disappeared. She looked radiant and energetic. If it had been someone more lively, the changes would have been more obvious. Jingwan vaguely mentioned that she knew about the imperial noble consort's existence. Therefore, she clearly knew from Qin Shufei that the imperial noble consort was getting better. As long as it was useful, it couldn't be better. Jingwan had a good impression of the real mother-in-law whom she hadn't met before. Because Jingwan came to the palace under the slogan of paying respects to the concubines, the empress and imperial noble consort Su didn't need to meet, but imperial noble consort Wei still had to meet. However, they used to be rivals in love. Even if imperial noble consort Wei's wishful thinking posed no threat to Jingwan, Jingwan still had enough respect for her. Besides, she was pregnant now. When Jingwan saw imperial noble consort Wei, she calculated the time. It seemed that it was almost time for her to give birth. Moreover, she had obtained it by using extreme means. Therefore, it was very likely that she would give birth prematurely. Therefore, she could give birth at any time now. Jingwan snorted in her heart. It seemed that it wasn't the right time. Imperial noble consort Wei's pregnancy was not very good. She suffered more. Pregnant women generally gained weight. But she didn't gain weight. Instead, she looked a lot thinner. In this way, her belly looked a little scary. Imperial noble consort Wei had closed the palace door long ago. But when she saw Jingwan, she was stimulated at once when she saw Jingwan's radiant face. What would happen if a pregnant woman who was about to give birth was stimulated? She would hold her belly and cry out in pain. Jingwan rolled her eyes. Yi Palace was in a state of chaos, even though they were well prepared. After all, it was a real old child. Lu Qingdi was still very concerned and rushed over. Why did it suddenly happen? Your Majesty, because imperial noble consort Jin. Jingwan looked at the hesitant look and sneered in her heart. Was she really a soft persimmon that could be pinched at will? Father, I guess concubine Xian must have thought of Prince Yu the moment she saw me, said Lin Minya. https://11//11807/127790008 HTML M. Chapter 499. Lu Qingdi's face suddenly turned black, and the palace servant who wanted to frame Jingwan just now felt his legs go soft. Thinking back, when Princess Yining was still Wei Xianfei, she clearly took a fancy to Jin Qinhuang. As a result, she was accidentally slept with by Lu Qingdi. Because Li Hanyuan didn't care at all, he didn't put Princess Yining in his eyes from the beginning. Lu Qingdi didn't have any grudges against his son, but it might not be the same for Wei Xianfei. Although he didn't say it, any man who knew that his woman's heart was filled with another man would definitely not be happy. Whether it was because of his anger or because Jingwan had exposed the truth, Lu Qingdi looked at her with a cold gaze. Jingwan didn't care. Her expression was natural, not affected by Lu Qingdi. She just stepped into the door, and Xianfei Nyang had a problem. How could she be blamed? Even if Jingwan didn't say it, Wei Xianfei didn't see others prejudiced against Jingwan. Who knew what kind of rumors there would be at that time? Lu Qingdi's head hurt again. Lao's sixth wife is considerate. Now, Yi Palace is in a mess. You go back first. Taking care of Yuan is the most important thing. Yes, Erxi knows. Fu Huang, rest assured, Wang Ye is not bad now. Jingwan said meaningfully. Lu Qingdi's heart moved. The last time he entered the palace, he had a bit of an argument with Gui Fei. When he went back that day, what was his situation? Jingwan frowned. There was no special behavior, just that his mood wasn't right. Erxi asked, but he didn't say. He drank a lot of wine alone and then fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he didn't drink anymore, but he was still depressed. Until the Imperial Gui Fei's ritual began, he gradually recovered. Nothing could be seen on his face, but Erxi always felt that Wang Ye seemed to be looking for trouble, trying to make himself busy. He's used to being idle, so doing this, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Lu Qingdi's brows also twisted. Persuade him when it's time to rest. Let him have a good rest. This is Erxi's duty. We know that you are a good person. We don't ask for anything else now. We only ask that you all be well. Rest assured, Imperial Father. Jingwan agreed verbally, but in her heart, she was cursing. They are indeed fine now, but I am afraid that you will be in trouble in the end. All right, you can go back. Yes, daughter-in-law will take her leave. Jingwan crouched down and left. Lu Qingdi's relaxed face turned gloomy in an instant. He looked coldly at the palace servant who tried to push the blame to Jingwan, drag him out, and beat him to death. Your Majesty, please spare my life, Imperial concubine Xian. Before he could finish his sentence, his mouth was already blocked. No matter what his original intention was, at this moment, he had said something that he shouldn't have said, so he had to take the initiative to pay a heavy price. Even if Imperial concubine Xian was pregnant with the dragon's seed, and even if she gave birth to a prince, it was impossible for her to ascend the throne. Therefore, her status would not rise because of this. It was hard to say what would happen to Imperial concubine Xian in the future. To some extent, it seemed that it depended on Lu Qingdi's mood. The former Wei was an internal strife now, and the princes were fighting to the death for the throne. It was much more serious than the Qi Yuan now. As the emperor of the former Wei, he was about to lose control of the situation, and the surrounding countries more or less knew about the situation. Therefore, no one had the time to care about Imperial concubine Xian now. Even if she died at this time, she would probably die. Speaking of which, when the Qi Yuan was glad that the former Wei would not take advantage of this opportunity to send troops, the former Wei was also glad that the Qi Yuan was hindered by the Xiongnu. Jingwan leisurely left the palace. She didn't care about the gazes of the people around her. As for those people's imaginations, alas, imaginations had always been a bottomless pit. It was also very colorful. Some might make people vomit blood in anger, and some might make people laugh until they were out of breath. Jingwan returned to Jin Wangfu. Since she didn't know that a certain person would take the initiative to ask, she told Li Hanyuan about the situation that she learned from Imperial concubine Qin. Li Hanyuan just casually responded twice and didn't have any other reaction, as if it had nothing to do with him. Jingwan expressed a little dissatisfaction and reached out to pull his face. That's your birth mother. She used herself as the prize for you to come back. Is it really good for you to be like this? Then, Wan, what do you want this husband to do? Li Hanyuan held Jingwan's hand. Wan, between me and her, we haven't interacted for even a day. It can be said that I have no feelings for her. You have to know, it's because I knew that she was the one who let me come back that I was able to redeem my regrets. Otherwise, even if I knew that she was still alive, I wouldn't have done anything. All my feelings have been used up on you, and I don't have any more to give to others. I think that I have already done what I can do. As for the consequences, it's completely not within my scope of consideration. From time to time, she would be covered in sweet words. Other than hugging him tightly, Jingwan really didn't know what to say. There is no need to say anything else. In the future, no matter what it is, I will bear it with you. Jingwan felt that with such a man who treated her wholeheartedly, she would do anything for him. Now, she might feel some negative emotions because of the deaths of some innocent people, but if there was a day when she needed to kill for him, then Jingwan felt that she would probably do it without hesitation. Of course, Li Hanyuan hugged Jingwan, his mind still going online from time to time. There was no other way. He just wanted Wan to be closer to him. However, things still went wrong, and it wasn't as smooth as expected. So far, only a small part of the 81 days of ritual had been completed. In the beginning, Li Honyuan and the others didn't know, but after receiving a hint from Master Chun, Jingwan once again rushed into the palace in a hurry. When she saw Qin Shufei, she knew that things were indeed a little troublesome. Qin Shufei was originally a peaceful, quiet, and beautiful woman, but now she gave people an illusion of evil. Of course, this feeling could not be felt by those who were around her every day. But for those who did not see her often, it would be more obvious if they compared her with her current self. Your Highness, how long has the situation been going on? Why didn't you send someone to tell us? Qin Shufei seemed to be affected on the surface, but after all, the ritual targeted the imperial noble consort's soul, so it didn't affect Qin Shufei's mind much. It's not that I don't want to tell you, it's... Qin Shufei was a little helpless. The situation isn't good now, and it seems very uncomfortable. Originally, I was like a cloud of white fog, but now my 4 limbs have been dyed black. I'm not sure what will happen if all of them are dyed black. Will they disappear, or will my current appearance be infinitely enlarged? No matter which one it is, it's very difficult to accept. However, I can more or less guess what she's thinking. She probably won't let the second situation happen. Jingwan understood. The imperial noble consort was willing to sacrifice her soul for her son's sake. So how could she allow unknown dangers to happen? Your Highness, we'll find a reason and think of a way. You don't do anything foolish. Qin Shufei nodded. Don't worry, there won't be any problems in the short term. There were 2 reasons for this situation. First, the person praying for blessings had evil intentions. Second, there was a problem with the senior monk presiding over the ritual. Although the other party's cultivation was far inferior to Master Chen's, Master Chen wasn't the only expert in this world. Reverend, do you know where the problem is? Li Hongyuan's face was still expressionless, but that didn't mean that he would easily let off someone who liked to play tricks behind his back. It would be best if he didn't find out who it was. If he did, I can roughly deduce 2 locations, the south and the northwest. Li Hongyuan's heart skipped a beat. The northwest can be explained as a result of the war, but the south. Thinking of a certain possibility, Li Honyuan felt that he should help their plan as soon as possible. He wanted to see if these people could really stir up a storm with such a big helper right under his nose. Is there any way to resolve the imperial noble consort's current situation? Although there are no records of this, it's obvious that it's not a good thing. Your Highness, don't worry. This humble monk will do his best. However, I can only prevent the situation from worsening. If you want to resolve it completely, you'll need to remove the source. This prince understands. Li Honyuan left. The next day, to everyone's surprise, he attended the morning court. Although he was still late, it was basically after everything had been settled. Li Honyuan was also quite straightforward. Imperial Father, this son requests to be stationed in the Northwest Army as an army supervisor. This really can be described as a stone that raises 1,000 ripples. Many people's ears were buzzing. Lu Qingdi was also stunned for a while, even doubting if he heard wrong. But when he saw the rare seriousness on Li Hongyuan's face, Lu Qingdi frowned. His eyes gradually sharpened. Do you know what you're saying? This son is very clear. Li Honyuan raised his head and looked directly at Lu Qingdi. The imperial noble consort's ritual has gone awry. Because of the war in the northwest, there are too many vengeful spirits and grievances. Although these things will completely disappear after a long time, it just so happens to clash with the imperial noble consort's ritual. According to Master Liaochen, this son and the imperial noble consort are blood-related. To a certain extent, our destinies are intertwined. If the grievances of the northwest are transferred to this son, then the imperial noble consort's influence can be neutralized. Although the imperial noble consort didn't raise this son, she was still pregnant for several months. This is probably the only thing I can do for her in this lifetime. Imperial Father, please grant me this wish. Li Hongyuan's emotions didn't fluctuate, but Lu Qingdi was moved. It's my fault, it's all my fault. If he could be more rational and not be instigated by others, then his beloved would be fine. then their family of 3. Thinking and thinking, Lu Chengdi covered his face with his hands. In the court, in front of the civil and military officials, he seemed to be unable to control himself and began to cry. Li Honyuan watched and sneered in his heart. No matter why he lost control of his emotions, Li Honyuan despised it. The courtiers looked at each other in dismay. Of course, not everyone was attracted by Lu Cheng Emperor's loss of self-control. Instead, they were considering what kind of impact Jin Xinhuang's trip to the northwest would have. Furthermore, what Jin Xinhuang said, how much truth was there? Lu Chengdi finally controlled his emotions. Lao Lu, this is no small matter. Zhen needs to consider it. Moreover, Zhen needs to know whether the grievances will affect you if they are transferred to you. If it's disadvantageous to you, then Zhen will have no face to see your imperial mother in the future. Do you still have the face to see her when you strangled her to death with your own hands? A person's death is like an extinguished lamp, but after death, they will stay in the world for a short time. When they dissipate, the grievances will naturally disappear. Therefore, Imperial Father can rest assured. Lu Chengdi nodded. Zhen understands. The longer it drags on, the more disadvantageous it will be for the Imperial Gui Fei. Imperial Father, please make a decision as soon as possible. Aken will retire. When he came, his presence was strong. When he left, it was the same. However, he didn't even want to wait for the morning court to end. So, why bother coming to the morning court? Once it's over, wouldn't it be better if he directly went to see the emperor? Is he here to show off his uniqueness to everyone? What they can think of, Lu Chengdi can naturally think of as well. In his view, it's probably because his son didn't want to meet him in private. Compared to Li Honyuan and the Imperial Gui Fei, who does Lu Chengdi care more about? Needless to say, it's definitely the latter. Moreover, Lu Chengdi wants to see the Imperial Gui Fei. Naturally, he doesn't want anything to happen to the Imperial Gui Fei. But considering his own plans for Fu Yunting, how can he let his son go to the Northwest so easily? As for whether or not his son will go to the Northwest Army, Lu Chengdi thought about it before, but he didn't care. Because when a prince goes to the battlefield, even if it's to be an army supervisor, he can't go alone. The accompanying personnel can be arranged by him, just like last year when he went to Jiangnan. While Lu Chengdi was lost in his thoughts while looking at the portrait of the Imperial Gui Fei, Li Suyin came to see him. In fact, Lu Chengdi liked this son very much. Although nominally Lu Chengdi recognized him as his adopted son, Lu Chengdi would do his best to do whatever he asked him to do. Lu Chengdi did not ask for the reason and did not bargain. Lu Chengdi did not need to worry about him. Lu Chengdi was lost in thought. Li Suyin just stood there quietly, not saying a word. Suyin, tell me, should Zhen let Jin Xinhuang go to the Northwest? This was the first time Lu Chengdi asked for Li Suyin's opinion instead of directly giving an order or giving a task. Li Suyin's expression didn't change. Emperor, forgive me for speaking bluntly. According to Emperor's plan for Fu Yunting, if Jin Xinhuang goes to the Northwest, he can be used. Impudent. Lu Chengdi was furious. Using his son's safety to deal with Fu Yunting, it was simply, Emperor can send trustworthy people to protect Wang Ye. If it's done properly, there won't be any evidence left behind, and Fu Shi can be eradicated. Lu Chengdi's anger subsided a little. He was considering the feasibility of this matter. Because his body was fine, he had enough time to do it. Emperor can even reveal a bit of the plan to Jin Xinhuang. With Wang Ye's cooperation, it will be twice the result with half the effort. Lu Chengdi looked at the portrait of the Imperial Gui Fei and fell into silence again. So, the Northwest trip was what you were preparing to do before? Since it didn't go according to plan, you simply used the matter of the Imperial Gui Fei and openly brought it up yourself? Jingwan stood in front of Li Honyuan and grabbed Li Hongyuan's arm. She seemed to be surprised and excited. Say, isn't your brain turning a little too fast? Everything that can be used by you has been used cleanly. You won't let go of even the slightest chance. Li Honyuan nodded. Indeed. Then, Wan, are you interested in going out of the capital with me to have fun again? As for what Jingwan said after that, Li Honyuan took it all as a compliment. He naturally accepted his wife's compliments with a smile. Jingwan was not surprised by his words. After knowing everything, it would be strange if he left her alone in the capital. But, please, the Northwest is at war. Can you not say such a carefree word like fun? It'll make people angry. They'll think that you don't care about the war at all, and that you don't care about the lives of many people. It will only enter your ears. Li Hongyuan pinched her earlobe. It's just that going to the Northwest will not be as carefree as going to Jiangnan. Not to mention other things, just the things that we will bring will only be simple and practical. One may have to suffer. What's there to feel wronged about? How could I feel wronged? Although I haven't suffered a single bit since I came to Qiyuan, it doesn't mean that I can't suffer. At most, I won't be so extravagant. There won't be any suffering. You won't allow it. Jingwan rubbed his chin. Even if it's a war, Wan is quite happy. Yes. Jingwan nodded. Although war itself is not something to be happy about, it is indeed very happy to be able to go to the Northwest and really experience it. Of course, it would be better if there was no war. If there is no war, there will be no excuse to go. In my heart, I still want Wan to go and experience it. Jingwan's expression changed slightly. Let you relive your memories, and let me have some memories of knowing each other. Yes, but also no, it's not reliving, but rewriting. All right, let the current me rewrite it. At the very least, I have to cover up the things that cause you pain. As for the things that you think are beautiful, I will be generous and not bother about them. What was there to be jealous of? It was really quite meaningless to talk about it. As long as you don't want to leave me, then it's okay to be calculative. It's because Wan has me in her heart that she will be calculative, right? Li Hongyuan's voice was laced with a hint of laughter. Jingwan looked up at him and pulled his face again. You look quite happy, right? As you can see, never be calculative with a thick-skinned person, otherwise, you will only be angered to death. But is there a special reason why Yuan insists on going to the Northwest? Is it just to take the opportunity to take me out and have a look? That's one of the reasons. The second reason is that I want to personally kill the Xiongnu virtuous king. Is there a grudge? A big grudge. In my previous life, although more than 200,000 soldiers died innocently, it was the work of the man on the throne. It was also because of the Xiongnu virtuous king. Later on, when I ascended the throne, I fought against him and suffered losses at his hands. Naturally, I want to take the opportunity to get revenge. In this life, if he sat on the throne again, Li Hongyuan did not intend to personally lead the army into battle. Therefore, the virtuous king who personally killed the Xiongnu virtuous king only had this one chance. Jingwan understood. Although the virtuous king of the West, Xiongnu virtuous king, was quite innocent and had not done anything, as long as his existence was a danger, then he must be eliminated. As for his innocence, that was only because Prince Jin of the Qi Yuan took the initiative. Although this matter had not been decided yet. In Jingwan's view, the possibility of Emperor Lu Qingdi not agreeing was very low. Therefore, she began to prepare in advance. She had read a lot of travel books about the Northwest, so she knew about the local customs and the current climate. It did not matter if she did not know about it. Anyway, Prince Jin's residence did not lack relevant professionals. Unlike the trip to Jiangnan, all the luxurious and exquisite things were abandoned. Even the clothes had to be simple so that it was convenient to move around. Moreover, on the battlefield, perhaps she could bring some medicine, especially medicine for wounds. In the end, the number of people who followed her would not be as many as in Jiangnan. Now, the only maids serving her were probably Sister He and Nanny Gong. After calculating, it was enough. After all, even a 9th grade handicapped person could become an elite with some pressure. As they did not know about the trip, the servants were a little confused when they heard Jingwan's orders. However, they only needed to obey their master's orders. Sure enough, within 2 days, Emperor Lu Qingdi's decree came down. The personnel assigned to Li Hongyuan were not as luxurious as when they went to Jiangnan. They were more simple, and the military strength was higher. Jingwan did not hide the things she ordered. Some things still needed to be purchased. Basically, some things could be seen from it. Obviously, this time was different from the last trip to Jiangnan. They did not intend to follow quietly at all and only let people know at the end. It could be said that they made a big fuss. Was Prince Jean going to take Prince Consort Jean? Many people found it inconceivable. Last year in Jiangnan, the Northwest was full of war. Taking women there? What kind of joke was this? Lu Qingdi soon knew about it, but he didn't say anything. Moreover, even if he tried to stop it, it would be useless. Since his son had already let others know about it, his attitude was already very clear. The father and son wanted to at least maintain their relationship on the surface. If he tried to stop it, he didn't know if his son would directly go against him. Moreover, in Emperor Lu Qingdi's view, his son always needed someone to take care of him. If it was other women, they might be labeled as indulging in sensual pleasures. It did not matter if it was other places, but it was absolutely not a place of war. With his Wang Fei, the mood was different. It was just that Emperor Lu Qingdi did not react, but Luo family's reaction was a bit big. They naturally approved of a place like Jiangnan, but what was the situation in the Northwest now? Was it a place where a woman could easily set foot? Even Prince Jean could really go to the battlefield, let alone Prince Consort Jean. However, when the two countries were at war, both sides would eliminate a lot of spies, and there might be spies that had already been arranged. If she, a prince consort, appeared, wouldn't it be a living target for these people? So they did not agree. They firmly did not agree. Old Madame Luo and Zhang Shi could not sit still and directly went to Prince Jean Fu to see Jingwan. Zhang Shi was a typical person made of water. Although she had not been sad for a long time, but at this moment, her eyes were like a flood breaking through a dam. Usually, old Madame Luo hated Zhang Shi the most. But this time, she felt that her tears were not useless. Therefore, when Jingwan had a headache and comforted Zhang Shi, she sat on the side. Zhang Shi could not be comforted, and Jingwan was too lazy to say anything in the end. She directly looked at old Madame Luo. "Grandmother, this time, no matter what, I will go. So, I ask grandmother to help me this time. Forgive granddaughter for being unfilial." Old Madame Luo frowned. Jingwan was raised by her, and old Madame Luo was very clear about Jingwan's temperament. Some things had already been decided, and then even Nine Bulls could not pull her back. "Wan, have you really decided?" "Yes, grandmother." "In that case, I will not persuade you, and I will not ask why you insist on going. But you must send letters back often to let us know that you are safe." In the end, Madame Luo was a reasonable person. She knew that she couldn't persuade her, so she didn't say any harsh words. Some words, although in essence, were good in order to keep people. Once spoken, it would also be very hurtful. "Yes, grandmother, I will." Jingwan chuckled. "Mother." Zhang Shi was stunned. This was different from what they had agreed. Didn't they say that they would make Wan stay no matter what? "Okay, don't cry. Don't you think it's bad luck to cry all day long?" Old Madame Luo said in a bad mood. Zhang Shi choked. "Don't think that I didn't see it before." Old Madame Luo clearly approved of her crying. How long had it been? And now she changed her mind. Zhang Shi felt very wronged, but since old Madame Luo did not allow her to cry, Zhang Shi did not dare to cry anymore. However, she cried for too long and too fiercely. For a while, she could not stop sobbing. She felt very uncomfortable, and so did others. Jingwan called the servant girls to take Zhang Shi down to wash her face and apply it to her eyes. Otherwise, her eyes would be very uncomfortable if this continued for a long time. Old Madame Luo did not persuade her anymore. Old Madame Luo carefully observed some things with her. Although Jingwan knew a lot of it, she knew that this was her grandmother's love and care. She listened carefully and expressed that she would pay attention at all times. Later, Li Hanyuan also came. Obviously, old Madame Luo would not give him face at this time. He knew that if it was not his intention, his granddaughter would not go. Therefore, the source was still Jean Xinhuang. However, because of her identity and also taking Jingwan into consideration, old Madame Luo's attitude was a little cold, but her words were not bad at all. Li Hanyuan knew very well what kind of treatment he would receive if he came. However, he guessed that old Madame Luo would have something to say to him in the end. At the same time, because he knew that the other party was completely for Jingwan. It did not matter if he received a cold face. Whatever old Madame Luo said, he would obediently listen and be an ordinary grandson-in-law. Although old Madame Luo was still worried about Jingwan's future, for now, she was very satisfied with Li Honyuan, this grandson-in-law. Although she did not have as deep a relationship with her other granddaughters as Jingwan, it was not that she did not care. Thinking about it, all the other grandson-in-laws added together could not compare to this one. It was the same in all aspects. In fact, when it came to the status of son-in-law and grandson-in-law, other than the benefits, the status of the Yu family was inversely proportional to everything else. The higher the status, the more unsatisfactory it was. After all, because of their high status, there were many things that they did not have to worry about and may not treat their own daughter well. If their status was low, there would always be some fear when doing certain things. However, Li Honyuan was good to Jingwan. As a member of the Luo family, sometimes they felt a little embarrassed. After sending off old Madame Luo, because Li Hongyuan's attitude was unusually good, Jingwan was very intimate with him for a while. Therefore, who said that Jin Xinwang would definitely be wronged? Perhaps they were scheming again. Li Honyuan used the excuse that the Imperial Gue phase matter could not be delayed and left in a hurry. Lu Qingdi naturally did not have any objections, but there were some things that he wanted to instruct him. However, Li Honyuan was not summoned, and this kind of thing could not be spoken to by a third party, let alone leave something like a secret edict. Therefore, he could only entrust this matter to Li Suyan. Ever since the horse farm was built, Jingwan would ride the horse from time to time. Perhaps it was because Li Honyuan already had a plan and did not limit it to Jingwan running on flat roads. Jingwan's current equestrian skills were not very good, but as long as she did not let loose and the road was not that rugged, Jingwan's speed could basically keep up. It was not certain if she would still get carsick from sitting in a carriage, but most of the time, Jingwan would follow the horse. Although riding for a long time might cause some suffering, she had already prepared for this. The medicine had already been prepared. When she rested at night, she would apply the medicine and continue the next day. When she really could not bear it anymore, she would take the carriage to prevent her body from having problems and slowing down the journey. Li Honyuan had never stopped letting the Ministry of Works remodel the carriage. So far, it had been quite effective. In addition to the meticulous arrangement, although the carriage was not as spacious and exquisite as Li Hongyuan's carriage that symbolizes identity, the comfort was not much worse. Now that she was not as carsick as before, it was not unbearable. With regards to Jingwan's degree of delicateness, the people of Jin Xinwang Fu had all seen it. They were actually a little worried about this trip, but the facts showed that she had once again exceeded their expectations. Especially Gong Jiao. He could not help but think of the scene at Bailong Temple, where he saw her taking care of Li Honyuan. At that time, he felt that she did not seem like a noble lady from a noble family. Now, she also did not seem like a Wang Fei that was piled up with gold and jade by Master. At one time, they were dissatisfied with Jingwan, although it was only in their hearts, because Master could not do without her. They only hoped that she would not be a burden. However, the facts proved that this Wang Fei was always able to go beyond their expectations. In their eyes, there was no one more suitable than her to be Jin Qinwang's existence. Not only would she not be a burden, when needed, she could also completely stand up, support the situation, and help Master. Not to mention the others, especially those who had followed them to Jiangnan, the delicate appearance of Jin Qinwang's Wang Fei could be said to be fresh in their minds. So when they saw Jingwan most of the time, she was capable and experienced, riding with them, and did not need to slow down in order to take care of her. They all doubted whether this person was really Jin Qinwang's Wang Fei. Could it be that one really could not judge a book by its cover? Not only that, this Wang Fei was amazing. The people who serve her were also not the least bit lacking. Not to mention that servant girl who seemed to be trained, that mama who looked to be in her 40s or 50s, her horse riding skills seemed to be above most of them, making them, this group of big men, feel ashamed and unable to show their faces. Along the way, when they stopped to rest, Jingwan also consciously began to practice the hand crossbow. In addition, Li Honyuan also equipped her with the sleeve arrows that were usually used by secret guards. Although he was confident that he could protect Jingwan's safety, there was never a lack of contingencies in the world. Therefore, it was not a bad thing for Jingwan to have some self-defense skills. They arrived 2 days earlier than expected. Although they were at Lu Chengdi's place for the imperial noble consort's matter, it was not easy to announce it. At least, it could not be known to the people in the northwest. Moreover, Li Honyuan had the title of inspecting the army, so naturally, he was the first to arrive at the front line. Jingwan was arranged to stay in the city first. Because they had been informed in advance, they had already made arrangements. However, because there was a battle ahead, they did not see Fu Yunting and the others. Jingwan did not care. She could not set foot in the camp where the army was stationed, so she safely settled down in the courtyard in the city. She would rest for a while before making plans. Most of the people were left behind. Li Honyuan only brought a few people and went directly to the army camp to see Fu Yunting. Because the imperial court had sent a prince to supervise the army, and he was the one with the worst reputation, there were many generals. Those who had followed Fu Yunting were only a minority. These people knew Li Honyuan very well, and the others had also heard of him. Therefore, they were very nervous. These people were not afraid of war. They were only afraid of being cheated. However, when they really saw Li Honyuan, those who knew him were still fine. Those who did not know him were completely stunned by Li Hongyuan's appearance and temperament. Sinister and ruthless, temperamental, drinking human blood, eating human flesh. This kind of person, even if he did not have 3 heads and 6 arms, he should have a sinister face like a yiksha. In the end, he was incomparably handsome, noble, and graceful. If one were to say that he was a god from the 9th heaven, there would be people who would believe it. However, this kind of shock could not be maintained for more than a few breaths. Li Honyuan flung the horsewhip in his hand. His eyes were sharp and cold, clearly telling these people that Jin Xinwang was not as terrifying as they imagined, but he was definitely not as harmless as the first impression. Fu Yunting led the way to the main tent. Was he looking for trouble the moment he arrived? The people behind Fu Yunting looked at each other in dismay, but did not dare to say anything, asking Wang Ye to follow this humble one. Fu Yunting's expression did not change as he led the way in front. Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyin, and Imperial bodyguard Qian followed. The others were on standby. Opening the tent door, Li Honyuan directly sat on the main seat. What is the situation now? Fu Yunting discreetly glanced at Li Suyin and Yu Zhongqing. Some thoughts flashed through his mind. Then he started to explain on the sand table. Li Honyuan listened silently from beginning to end, until Fu Yunting finished. Only then did he ask a few questions. It could be said that every word was a gem. Every sentence hit the nail on the head. From the beginning of the war until now, Li Honyuan had given Fu Yunting pointers several times through letters. Therefore, Fu Yunting knew that Li Honyuan also had considerable attainments in military strategy. It was just that when they were face to face, that kind of pressure suddenly increased by countless levels. That feeling was like a small soldier facing a decisive war god who had led the army for decades. There was even sweat on his forehead. Fu Yunting's heart was filled with fear and admiration. On the surface, he appeared to be careful, but he realized that there were many areas where he did not think things through thoroughly. He felt ashamed and focused 120%, memorizing them one by one. Speaking of which, actually, Li Hongyuan's narrow-mindedness acted up again. It was just that it was not good to deal with Fu Yunting openly, so naturally, he started from other aspects to absolutely suppress Fu Yunting. Although under his suppression, Fu Yunting might become stronger and stronger, but that was not what Li Honyuan wanted. After all, in the future, Fu Yunting would have to work hard for him. If Fu Yunting was not strong enough, how could he fight for his country? The few of them stayed in the tent for a long time, and the people outside were waiting impatiently. Speaking of which, Fu Yunting could be said to have the support of the masses. His prestige was very high, and the generals were very convinced. With such a person like him, The generals naturally did not want him to be suppressed or even humiliated because of his status. But after all, the other party was a prince and came under the emperor's orders. They could not do anything, and if they did, it might even bring trouble to him. It could be said that when they were anxiously waiting, he finally came out. Everyone hurriedly saluted, "Greetings, Your Highness." Li Honyuan was expressionless, but he was well aware of it. Therefore, it was reasonable. A general who was respected and loved by the soldiers was a qualified general. Only this way could he lead the soldiers to more victories. Li Honyuan prepared to leave the military camp, but someone stood up. "This general is unruly. Please show Your Highness the imperial edict. https://11/11807/128095546." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.